My guest today is a very popular cartoonist and illustrator whose Instagram handles says green_humor. Rohan Chakravarty is an author and illustrator known for his work in bridging art and science, particularly in the field of bird behavior. His book Bird Business focuses on showcasing the quirks, antics, and daily lives of 100 Indian birds and offers insights into their unique behaviors. What is really lovely about this book is that it is a mix of Rohan's illustrations along with very salient and important facts about bird behaviors. So, thank you, Rohan, for being part of the Bird podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's as a bird watcher and as a lover of birds, it's an honor to be on a podcast that deals with birds. Thanks a lot.
So, you're very famous in India and all over the world. How does a cartoonist and illustrator think about birds? Is it different from just the average bird watcher with the binoculars? How do you think about birds when you observe?
I'm not sure if I'm as famous as you claim, but thank you. As both a cartoonist and a bird watcher, and a cartoonist specifically who draws about nature and wild animals and their lives and their conservation, I think birds have been the subjects that have been most dear to me, and because of various reasons, because they are beautiful, they have such a lively spirit. They make their own music. But one trait of that is peculiar to birds that I find the most special as a cartoonist is that they exude a kind of mischief that many other creatures don't. So that's really made them made me so partial to birds as an artist, as a cartoonist.
Yeah,
So
the way
yeah.
you draw shows them with very with the mischief and the emotions. So the follow-up question was going to be walk us through the process of creating the book, but mostly to do with the illustrative style. We can talk about the species later.
Sure. So the illustrative style actually evolved from a lot of my influences, people whose illustration I've been really influenced by. As a cartoonist, you might find the style in which I execute my comics very different. It's got, a bold line and very minimal colors. But for bird business, I deployed a very flat and a minimal illustration style that is devoid of the bold line that I use in my comics. And this has primarily been influenced by two artists whose work has been very influential to me. One is Charlie Harper, who's a legendary illustrator of natural history and wildlife and ecology. And the other is Jendi Tartakovsky, who's an animator and whose series, particularly Samurai Jack, which was a series of cartoons I grew up watching. So these two illustration styles have kind of influenced the style that I have used for this book. And the reason is because the reason for using a flat and minimal style is because there were 100 sequences to execute, and there was also a lot of detail in terms of bird behavior, in terms of their habitat to depict. So I could not afford to be very lavish or very spend too much time with every sequence. So I had to illustrate it in a style that is minimal and yet visually impacting, and that's how this. Well, I got to this style, deploying the style for this book. Yeah.
And typically, for an illustrator, once you could settle on the style, you don't change it. So, in the course of writing this book, you didn't get tired and say, okay, let me do watercolor style for a change on in this chapter. It doesn't work like that.
No, absolutely not. You have to be, I mean, the trial and error has to happen before you jump into the process of creating the final illustration. So that was a process that was, there was a lot of trial and error to get to. I think I've made more than, I think 700, 800 notes and draft sketches that have gone behind the 100 illustrations that you see in the final book. So
Which
it's a
begs,
very lengthy process.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, it's a very lengthy process, the process of trial and error and figuring out what style to deploy. the visual look of the book that you finally zero down on. It's a very lengthy process to arrive at that.
And how did you choose the birds in the book? 100 out of the 1200 in India.
So the book really doesn't focus on the diversity of birds as such. It focuses on the diversity of bird behavior. So you may find two birds who are that are two species that may be very closely related to each other, but they feature in the book because they the way they behave, the way they interact with their environment, or the way they exploit the resources that are available to them. Those are very peculiar and those are very different from one another. So you know there are two species of kite, the black kite and the black shouldered kite. They are very close relatives of one another, but and yet they feature in the book because the way they behave is drastically different. So that is what governed the choice of which species goes into the book. Species that have very peculiar behaviors.
Yes. So the first podcast that we ever did, podcast number 1 was on the Great Indian Bustard, and I interviewed those in the field in Desert National Park. And one of the bird behaviors they pointed out was they said the bustard is in danger because it is not a generalist, and the black kite was the most superior. I mean, it adaptable. The bustard is very specific about how it lays eggs and where it lays eggs and things like that. So, if you and given your knowledge of bird behavior, if you could extend that, I mean, what are the kinds of bird behaviors?
Oh, there's so much. I mean, I think every bird, every species, no matter how similar they are in appearance or in in relation to each other on the evolutionary tree, every bird has certain peculiarities. And even among species, individuals have so much variation in the way they carry out their lives. Take the shikra, for example. A shikra is a very common urban raptor in India, and you could call it the apex predator of the bird ecosystem or the bird food chain within an urban setup. Now, I know that I've been observing shikras in many different parts of the country, and I know that the shikra specializes in hunting birds. It may take smaller prey like squirrels, lizards, but it specializes in hunting birds. But there is one individual shikra in my neighborhood that has figured out that if she hangs around a little, towards dusk, and she pushes her timetable or her boundaries a little, bats can be very easy prey for her because there is that a very small time period between her roosting time and the time when bats start to emerge from their roost, when twilight is just setting in. So this particular shikra has learned that bats can be very easy prey because they are slow flyers. They are not as fast as birds. So if she and she does this every you can see her every evening. When I go to my terrace, I can see her in action just in that small half an hour period of before twilight sets in. So there are these individual variations as well, and that's something really that really fascinates me. So this depiction of the shikra hunting a bat is something that has gone into my book, and it's really different species interact with their environments differently, and that is what each of these illustrations focuses on.
Sure. I want you to think about one thing. I guess I phrased the question wrong. I was thinking of communal birds of like parakeets in flocks and solitary hunters like the peregrine falcon. If there are ways of grouping birds according to their behavior, um,
Okay.
and which type of behavior. So, for example, is it a fair statement to say that birds who survive in urban India are better suited to not be extinct? Would that be something to think about? So, if evolutionarily, which are some of the behaviors that will serve them well, is really what I was getting at.
Okay. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I may not be qualified to answer this question from an ecological perspective or an evolutionary perspective. But as a layman and as an enthusiast, I can tell you that, and even somebody who's quite obsessed with monitoring birds. I am a daily contributor to eBird, and I keep uploading checklists. And I also try to figure out variations and changes between seasons, and how birds are adapting to my own environment, the places I've been visiting for bird watching. So I have been noticing that birds that are generalists are faring far better with changing conditions. If I can give you an example, the red-vented bulbul is one such bird that is adept at exploiting any given opportunity to it. So it has been expanding its range with the advent of deforestation, with more encroachment on forests, grasslands, so on and so forth. So I know that birds like the red-vented bulbul, the black drongo, even to a certain extent, say kites, black kites, they
And the
have been
peacock.
expanding their peacocks. Yes, they have been expanding their ranges because they are versatile.
Mm.
And if there are birds that are very specific and very dependent on a resource that is very specific or very limited, those are the birds that will not fare well in the the times to come. But of course, there may be exceptions, because a lot of other factors also determine which bird does well and which bird doesn't, like climate change, like how well they adapt to altitudes. So even
Yes.
if a generalist is not, even if a bird is generalist but is not suited to a particular altitude, that
Yes.
could affect
Yes.
how the bird is faring.
Yes. No, in the Eastern Himalayas, again, in a previous episode of the Bird Podcast, they were saying the altitudinal migrants that go up now have nowhere to go because,
Right.
yeah. This is about the research you've done for the book. You're clearly, what I found fascinating as a writer was that you have very specific facts that you have inserted here and there. So you say, for example, that the lammergeier, is that the right spelling, right way to pronounce it?
Yeah, the bearded vulture. Yes.
The bearded vulture. It takes 7 years to master the bone throwing skill that it's
Right.
known for. I mean, that's pretty specific. And how do you, first of all, A, how did you, what was your research process? And B, how did you decide what to, I mean, there are facts and there are facts, and then you have to choose. So how did you decide that?
Well, I just picked what really fascinated me the most, and by that extension, would also I would assume would fascinate my reader, because I'm a lay person. Uh, I'm not somebody who engages with too much theory. Even though my cartoons and comics are based on hard science, I do run away from boring science as much as possible. I'm not somebody who understands graphs and statistics very well, which is also the reason why I draw cartoons. So I feel that things like these that emphasize on the struggle of a bird's for a bird's survival, or how hard it is for it to get by with its life, and to learn the peculiarities that it is known for, and the peculiarities that set it apart from, say, other vultures or other raptors. The lammergeier has this advantage of being able to exploit marrow, which is a very uh, a nutrition rich source of food that is not available to any other creature in its habitat. So so to get there, to be able to exploit that, also would also take a certain evolutionary path, or even for an individual to learn that. So I dug up a lot of literature as much as I could. I own a copy of Rishad Noroji's extensive publication on raptors of India, and he did half the research for me in that way. He's one of India's most veteran and most well-known raptor ecologists. So
Yes.
I read his book end to end before I went about illustrating this book. A lot of the information that I've put in also comes from documentaries.
Yeah.
Uh, Attenborough's various series, for example, he's narrated sequences on beavers, on various raptors, etc. So a lot of the information or the snippets have been taken from Attenborough's narration, and even the way I have written the book, if you notice, is actually quite in a manner that somebody who's doing a voiceover for a wildlife documentary would narrate a particular sequence. So that
Yes.
was my brief to myself.
Okay. For those who haven't read the book, can you just give us a survey of bird behaviors that fascinate you?
Sure. So, again, birds are so diverse, and there's, one sentence or one paragraph may not be enough to sum it up. But the ones that have really fascinated me are many of the raptors, because even though, we know that they are birds of prey and they are carnivorous animals, the way they approach carnivory, or the way they go about their lives and pursue their prey, is so diverse from one another. So, and it all has to do with the design of the bird. So if a bird has long wings, there's a reason for that. If a bird has short wings, there's a reason for that. So the crested goshawk is one such bird which uses the small size of its wings to be able to maneuver within dense and thick foliage. A bird with long wings will not be able to do that. Similarly, the black eagle, which has a very long wingspan, uses it to do a very slow and a deliberate survey of the canopy, and then descend on prey, which is usually the contents of a bird's nest,
Yeah.
which is only visible to a bird that glides slowly through the air, and from a certain height. So these are the things that set birds apart, the design elements in their anatomy that set them apart, and how it influences their behavior. That is something that has really fascinated me, and that's also the focus of this book.
Hmm. Have you seen all the species in the book? For example,
Oh no, I've not been that lucky as a bird watcher.
yeah.
I've probably seen less than half of the birds that have been illustrated. So,
Uh-huh.
but I have done as much research as I could, having watched videos, pictures, having heard their calls, and yeah, the ones that I have observed, I have made detailed notes of field notes, and various draft sketches before illustrating the sequences.
Ah, okay. So yeah, I saw that the bar-tailed tree creeper, and I was like, wow, he's seen all of that, huh? Okay.
I have, yes. The tree creeper I have seen various times ago. Yes.
Okay. The other thing, and again, like you say, you're not a science. You said you're not a scientist, so I don't know if you know this, but you say nuthatches spiral downwards and the tree
That's
creeper,
right, yeah.
yeah. But why is
Spiral
that?
upward. Why is that? Wow, I never paid attention to this aspect.
Ah,
There's
okay.
a very interesting comic that I can think of, that my friend Rosemary Moscow, she's also a biologist and an excellent cartoonist. So she's done a cartoon where the nuthatch is spiraling upwards and a tree creeper is spiraling downwards, and they bump into each other. So
What a great cartoon.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
really don't know the reason
Yeah.
why it
Okay.
happens. Yeah.
And the other fascinating thing that you talk about is, I mean, we've all seen Baya weaver colonies nesting near water bodies, but I
Right, yeah.
didn't realize that it was because they were of predation by snakes and yeah, water snakes, I guess. Then the
Well, it's actually not as much the location, but the design of the nest that makes it snake proof. Because
uh
if you notice, the structure of the nest keeps tapering downwards,
yes.
and narrowing downwards. So at a certain juncture, it gets so light that it cannot sustain the weight of a snake that wants to enter it, and that's how it it achieves defense from a predator like the snake.
Yeah, I mean I think over the many episodes I mean Dr. Samira Agnihotri was on the podcast and she talks about vocalization of birds,
Yeah.
and then there is a Dr. Anusha Shankar. She talks about how hummingbirds achieve this thing called torpor, where they basically freeze
Yes,
themselves. No, it's I think,
like
but also,
hibernation.
sorry.
I mean, it's the bird equivalent of hibernation, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I think what was great about your book was that it was the first book that pretty much was entirely about bird behavior. Um, I also wanted to ask you a specific thing about why the brown fish owls wade instead of doing the traditional thing that owls do.
Uh, Again, I'm not sure because see, if I was a scientist, I would be able to answer these questions with a lot more definitive,
Okay.
a lot more certainty. But the process of figuring out how the brown fish owl hunts was an interesting one for me. I haven't seen the bird in action, no? Even though I have seen the bird several times. I haven't really seen it in action, and I've always wondered what it does, how it fishes. And just a straightforward sequence, like how an eagle goes about fishing, seemed a bit unlikely for me because owls, they have very bulky wings. They don't have uh, the aerodynamism of eagles. So I've always wondered how it must hunt. And I looked up videos and also research of other owls in the same genus, Ketupa. And I think I came across the video of a Blackinston fish owl from China that waits and catches fish. It doesn't swoop. So that is how I figured out. And then there was, I think, the Salim Ali also attested somewhere in one of his publications that the brown fish owl also does that, but this was never documented, at least not in my knowledge. So that is how I arrived at that conclusion.
Do you have, this is something we ask all our guests. Do you have, first of all, the question is, do you have a favorite species and why? But before that, I want to ask you, do you have a favorite, like, do you like raptors? Do you like night hunters? Do you have a certain specific type of bird behavior that you like more than others? Do you like birds that flock, solitary birds? Is there anything, any one behavior that fascinates you before we go to your favorite type of birds?
Uh, yeah, I think I'm an artist, so I think nest building is something that really fascinates me, and the fact that the Baya weaver has to make 500, 600 trips to complete that beautiful structure, that is something that really baffles, and it's quite an enigma to me.
Yes.
I also camouflage is one thing that really fascinates me, and it's also something I aspire to achieve in a sense that I'm quite reclusive. So when I'm forced to attend a family wedding or a gathering, I try to wear gray and blend with the walls and camouflage myself from crowds. So that is
Interesting.
something like nightjars do. That appeals to me a lot.
Yes.
Uh, and that also kind of makes them my favorite animals. Now, if you ask me about my favorite species, the answer will change every week. But right now, because it's monsoon, it's cuckoo season. I have pied cuckoos and gray-bellied cuckoos, right outside in my vicinity. And the morning, their music fills the air and gives, I think, turns the entire colony into a concert, and I'm really enjoying that right now. So I would say those two are my favorite monsoon species. Yeah.
And they are so tied to the Indian poetry and literature, I find,
Oh,
especially the old Indian poetry and literature.
even classical music, there's so many songs about the papiha, the hawk cuckoo.
Correct.
Yeah.
Where are you right now? Which part of the world are you?
I'm based in Nagpur, bang
Okay.
in the center. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So that's yeah. Somehow I thought you were in Bangalore because here is everybody knows you. Um, One of my favorite species and that you've written about in the book is the bar-headed geese, and I loved your pun about bar-headed geese raising the bar, because the migration they make above the Himalayas is really incredible, isn't it?
It is, and a lot goes behind that ability. They have specialized hemoglobin, they have specialized muscles, flight muscles, specialized blood vessels. So again, it's the design and several aspects of how the bird leads its life that makes it capable of achieving such a feat, which is what also prompted the pun. The bar-headed goose has also been a subject of a lot of my comics, other than just the book,
Yeah.
because of this precise ability. Yeah.
Ah, okay, got it. Are you a natural punster, or do you specifically, when you wrote this book, you said, this is ripe for puns, I must do it?
No, I don't think I'm a punster as such, not in day-to-day conversation. Actually a very boring person in real life. I think as a cartoonist, my other personality shows up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, last question, Rohan, is how do you go bird watching, and do you have any tips for the our audience? So, do you carry a notebook? I mean, what? How do you go bird watching?
I carry a pair of binoculars and a tiny pocket field notebook that I just scribble notes on. I'm not much of a field sketcher or a I don't sit and paint out when I'm out birding. I have very little patience for that, but I do make cartoon notes a lot of all my observations. And if I find the time and if I've actually seen something really special, I try to take pictures. But I'm not much of a photographer, and I don't like photography as such.
Mm. Yeah.
That is how I go bird watching these days, because of work, and also because a lot of the we've actually lost a lot of wetlands and parks because of unplanned development in the city, which is extremely unfortunate. So I still try to go birding. I try to convert my morning walks into bird walks, and thankfully both my pets who accompany me on these walks, they also comply. They are also bird watchers in their own right now. So yeah, that's how I go birding.
This was to be my last question, but actually, my last question is your conservation work. And
Yeah.
so you started to talk about the losing the wetlands. What occupies you now?
I'm sorry, I didn't
So
get your question.
your interest in conservation and
Yeah.
connecting the science and the arts. So what occupies you now, as in what are the ideas you're thinking about that may end up, who knows, in another book or something? What is occupying you now? What?
Oh, so, see, my mainstay as a cartoonist is four periodical columns that I do
Yes,
that got published under the title Green Humour,
yes.
uh, and they deal with various environmental issues, not just in India but also the world. So, whatever if there's a major environmental event and people are failing to link it to their own lives, or say a major geopolitical development and people are failing to link it to climate change or the collapse of agriculture or unplanned development in any given region in India or the world, I try to make it a point to cover to kind of explore that link and present it in the form of a comic strip in my cartoons. That is what Green Humor primarily is about. It also deals with the ecology of interesting species that happen to catch my interest. So I when I read the news, I try to find out what the environmental issues are that are escaping mainstream attention, and I try to pick those and shed more light on them through cartoons.
Okay.
And even bird business is actually, it deals with the conservation of birds in a way that it encourages people to make a link between bird behavior and their own lives. So for example, in my own vicinity, the the collapse in the number of bee eaters is something that I've been noticing, and that's directly linked to the number of dragonflies because bee eaters eat dragonflies, and that is linked to the number of mosquitoes because dragonflies eat mosquitoes. So I want people to make links between the decreasing number of bee eaters and the increasing number of mosquitoes and disease in a given region by knowing bird behavior. So that is really the point of the book.
That's such a powerful ending because here in my building in Bangalore, we fumigate mosquitoes like anything, and
Right.
without realizing the effects of that, what we are doing. Yeah. So Rohan Chakravarty, thank you so much for being a part of the Bird podcast.
Thanks a lot, Shobha. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Okay, I'll just